Hello and welcome to this special discussion as a prelude to the SBI General Insurance SME Awards partnered by Times Network. Depending on the statistics that you refer to, SMEs contribute to about 40% of the country's GDP. But the important part is, what is the way ahead? And I have a panel of experts with me here today to talk about that and to talk about the growth opportunities over the next 3 years for the SME sector. Allow me to first introduce my panel. On my right is Mr. Pushan Mahapatra. He's the MD and CEO of SBI General Insurance. Then we have Gaurav Hazra. He's the Senior Director and Head of India Markets at NASSCOM. Sushma Morthania, the Director General at India SME Forum. And Dinkar, who's a partner at Bain and Company. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. First up, Mr. Mahapatra, in your estimation, what can be done for the SME sector to, take things up to the next level?
SME is a very integral and important part of the Indian economy, be it in terms of the GDP, be it in terms of manufacturing numbers, or in terms of employment. But there are certain challenges also which need to be addressed if we are looking to move towards that 5 trillion economy in the next 3 to 4 years. One is capital, second is credit, third is skill, fourth is looking at compliances, adoption of technology and protection.
Right.
So on all of them, I think there's a lot which needs to be done, and over a period of time, I think some things have started happening, but they need to move in a much faster pace.
For sure. Gaurav, I'll come to you, and taking off from what Mr. Mahapatra said, coming to you specifically on the technology part. Technology, of course, a great enabler, but SMEs are also at times wary of technology because they might feel that they don't know how to use it the best, or they feel that, it might just become outdated and it's an expense. How do you advise SMEs like that?
Technology is an investment, it is not a cost. I think one of the things that SMEs struggle, especially in the non-tech side, which is very, very shop floor driven, very labor intensive, is that tech is more seen as a cost center. But what needs to be understood, and this needs to be demystified by all of us as industry to the SME sector, is that tech is an investment that you are making for the future. Every business is going to be touched by tech in one way or the other. It is like mobile phone touching all aspects of our lives today. And we can't really treat a mobile as a cost anymore. It is an investment in many ways. So in a similar way, I think SMEs need to continue to invest in tech, which is good for their business. I mean, to the degree that it helps their business, without actually overdoing it or underdoing it. So to strike the right tech balance in your business is going to be extremely critical. And I think the key enabler for this is the right partnerships with SMEs who are in the tech business. So the only ways SMEs can really adopt technology and balance it with their non-tech side of the business is to probably partner with the ecosystem of SMEs who are tech providers. And then the whole ecosystem gets balanced. I think that's how I look at it.
And most of the SMEs work on very thin margins. And technology is one thing which can help them to become more efficient.
I'll just add to one last thing to what Mr. Mahapatra said. I think one of the key things that is sort of holding the SMEs back is their smooth transition into scalable companies through compliance. Now, if you come to think of it, compliance is all about technology today. Everything, whether it is taxation, whether it is credit ratings, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is quality, it's all tech. So it's very hard to say that tech is a cost.
And so I think just adding there, the accelerated formalization of the Indian economy, which is essentially what we're going through right now, I don't think it's going to happen without a wide-scale mass adoption of technology by all firms, not just SMEs or large firms, but SMEs will be an integral part of that adoption of technology. And I think that's the push, so to speak. But what makes it really easy is actually the newer generation of technology is also not as much of the tax it was on a firm, let's say 15 years ago. The nature of technology is so much more nimble, it's out of the box, literally, as in all the cloud-based as a service models, which actually make it easier. So even simple software, you'll find accounting software, for example, they're increasingly cloud-enabled, which actually only make it easier. But it will take some time. I think it's a broad church we are referring to as far as SMEs go.
The good part is it's becoming more of an OPEX rather than a CAPEX. So it's becoming pay as you go, right? Sushma, wanted to get you in on the conversation.
Yes.
Give us your point of view from what's happening on the ground. What are some of the maybe major pain points that SMEs are facing?
I would just like to say three major challenges that MSMEs face. One, mentorship, money, of course, yes, and market.
Yes.
These are the three major challenges that every single MSME faces. And I think these are the things that need to be addressed.
Right.
And my advice to MSMEs would also be, somewhere they get entangled and engrossed in their daily routines. So more than working in their business, they need to start working on their business.
Right.
They need to be free, looking at new strategies, new market opportunities, new products and services and technology tools that they can adopt in their businesses, setting up business systems, reporting mechanisms and all. And that's how they'll be in a position to scale their business. I think that's the way to go for MSMEs in the current times.
For sure. Mr. Mahapatra, I want to take this a little ahead with you. So, of course, these are the main pain points, the main concerns, and these are the risks that SMEs keep in mind that they're worried about. But the thing is, these are the in-your-face risks. These are the ones that can be seen. But there are a certain amount of risks which, well, they don't think about. They might not fathom. And I want to get you in on that aspect and your thoughts on this, because risk mitigation is very essential for all businesses. Big businesses take that into account, but SMEs don't. Your thoughts on that and your advice on how that can be achieved.
Business is all about taking risks. It's an integral part of the model. Having taken the risk, how well you mitigate it and how well you manage it. Every business, and more so with SMEs being more vulnerable,
Yes.
they all depend on cash flows. Continued growth of any business is continuous cash flows coming in. All businesses carry risks on their balance sheets, both directly and indirectly. Right from, if you take on the asset side, from cash to their receivables with fixed assets, current assets all put in, each of them does carry an element of risk.
Of course.
Unfortunately, the impact of that is not understood by most of the SMEs very well. So there are ways and means of managing the risks.
Sometimes it just becomes a little overwhelming for them also, because it becomes like, this is my receivables, this is the sales I'm making, these are my expenses. Why should I put on another expense of insurance? So how do you tackle that?
See, if you see the cost of insurance, it's not a major expense. It's actual P&L. It's a very small amount, but God forbid there is an event. The losses are way out of their way.
Absolutely, because that's what has happened in Chennai.
Yeah.
I mean, so many MSMEs, they actually had to shut down their business because they couldn't survive. And I mean, we take insurance for exports. Why not for domestic business?
Right.
So I think that is just a culture that needs to be inculcated in the way of doing our businesses.
Dinkar, the other part here is this future looking, or rather planning for the future. How do you guide SMEs to take that time out and focus on this and not assume ki, gaadi to chalti rahegi?
Yeah. So I think essentially, if you were to look, there are two types of businesses, small businesses. The ones which actually scale and the ones which don't. Now, if you were to study the differences between what makes something scale and what doesn't, the biggest constraint, capital is a constraint, obviously,
Yes.
but actually the bigger constraint is the time of the founder, or the time of the promoter, or however we choose to call the person. We've done this study across several founder-run businesses, multiple geographies, and I think the bigger constraint progressively is less so capital, because I think you might, in the micro situation, you'll face that. But in the aggregate scheme of abundant capital globally, it's actually not as much of a challenge if you have a scalable business. And for you to have a scalable business, it's your time, which is actually the founder's time, the promoter's time, which is actually the most scarce resource.
Wow, okay. So
Yeah, and I again would like to add to this is, as entrepreneurs, what we do is trust factor plays a very important role in how we manage our business. So what happens is, as an MSME, we try to bring in our relatives and friends in doing different functions of our business rather than getting professionals, and that is where we keep getting entangled. So it's high time that entrepreneurs started involving and bringing in professionals to do professional functions of the business, and I think that's where they'll have free time to do a look at other aspects of growing their business.
Interesting.
So I'll just add to this conversation. I think one of the ways of future proofing is nothing but build a second layer. And all of what we are talking about is like summarized in the second layer. A lot of SMEs, especially in our country, where people are very, very emotionally connected to their business, it's a part of their family, it's a lifestyle. It is very hard for them to bring in a so-called outsider. But the fact remains that the outsider comes with a unique skill which may not exist within the family. And I think this is the first step to scaling. You can't scale unless you bring new people into the system. And I think we have to come of age on this count. And technology helps you do that. Because it helps you take out the people dependency, makes it a robust system. You can bring in people, you can scale well. I think this is also a cultural shift that we need to look at.
Yes, because the concern becomes generally, if I was an entrepreneur, I feel that this is my circle of comfort. So I've got my relatives, I've got my brother, I've got my sister who are working with me, as opposed to maybe XYZ who's come from another company and who could leave me and go. So I think that is the switch that is required.
The fallout of that is that all of them have the same limitation in thought process that I might have. So when an outsider comes, he challenges the status quo. And that's the only way to grow.
Yes. So revenue always grows faster than talent. Almost every business, any growing business, revenue grows faster than talent. But at some stage, if you don't grow the talent, it stops growing the revenue.
I think there is a life cycle of smaller companies. I mean, if you see back in the States or in Japan or wherever, people are ready to hand over a business to a new generation completely outside their comfort zone and move on. Indian entrepreneurs are, they're quite good at keeping the business close to themselves, which is great. But the fact is, there is a time when an entrepreneur must decide that I've been able to take this business to this level, and now the business has outgrown my capability, and I need to bring in a new set of entrepreneurs to run my business, whether it's an exit, whether it's a sell-off, or it's just bringing in talent.
Mr. Mahapatra, I want to take this on a little bit of a tangent, but what I'm trying to come to you is about something called keyman insurance, which is very few people talk about it, which is when you're insuring, the business insures one of the partners. Very few people speak about this. Just wanted to get your thoughts on this. How can it be essential and why should it be done? Because in a way you're kind of again protecting your business.
While keyman insurance is very essential, at least to that extent that some of the liabilities can be squared off from that. But the bigger is to build that entire ecosystem of talent within the company, that absence of one person should not totally cripple the organization. You have to build alternate layers, and which is true for every business. You need to have your delegation in relationship to the size of the company and the complexity of the company. And as you become bigger and more complex, you will have to put this entire structure in place.
It's very philosophical, but an entrepreneur has to make himself or herself redundant in the business. And I think it comes back to the age-old prophecy of saying that people process tools. We've been learning this in all our lives. But that's a fact. I mean, an entrepreneur over a period of time will have to bring in people, will have to set up process, will have to implement tools that will make the individual redundant to the extent possible.
Sushma, I just wanted to bring in another perspective. When businesses are growing, besides domestic growth, they also want to look at international growth. Different set of challenges. How should companies approach that, SMEs especially, because they might feel that, listen, we're not being able to completely cover the domestic market, and here we're trying to go global? There's a different set of challenges that they have to overcome for that.
Sure. At least in our country, the orientation for exports is very, very minimal compared to, our competitors, South Asian countries like China or Vietnam or Korea for that matter. So our exporters and our MSMEs, they do not have necessary information on what kind of products could be exported, where the markets lie, what is the pricing. So first, lack of awareness and information. Secondly, you might be surprised at the figures. We know that there are almost 6.5 crore enterprises in our country, which are MSMEs. But of these, only 29,000 MSMEs are exporters. 29,000, please mark my figures, and 1.33 lakhs are exporters, which include merchant exporters and star trading houses and so on and so forth. So, there is a lot of effort that needs to firstly go in building the export potential from our MSMEs. At India SME Forum, we are trying to, keep on facilitating and building awareness programs and trying to talk about market opportunities and all. Central government is also looking at creating and formulating policies which will help in, accessing this potential. So yes, we have to build exports of our country, and still a long way to go.
Superb. Well, we're just about running out of time, so I'll come to everybody for closing comments. Dinkar, starting with you. Also, with your closing comments, if you could just put out 1-2 points on the importance of managing your sales strategy, it's for SMEs. That is also one of their concerns, they're marketing their business.
Yeah, so I think just from a future standpoint, and I'll come back to the sales in a second. From a future standpoint, I think the one thing I'm quite optimistic on, just keeping in context the $5 trillion economy, is actually the manufacturing economy in India. There are very few countries in the world which have gone to 5 trillion and beyond without at least $1 trillion of manufacturing in there. So, and I think if India were to, trillion is tripling of what we are right now, just slightly less than that. If India was to get there, it'll actually come on the back of pretty wide and deep manufacturing ecosystem. And country after country, the manufacturing ecosystem is actually quite substantially SME in nature. So to that extent, yes, there'll be services and others will grow, but actually the growth, enormous amounts will actually come from the manufacturing side on the SME ecosystem. To your question on the sales cycle, I think, so it's I think the businesses of different sorts in many ways. I think there's 2 arguments to be made. Businesses which have actually a very concentrated set of customers are fundamentally risky, and that because something can happen to the customers and you actually have a downstream impact. But having said this, if you have deep, long-standing customer relationships, if relatively few, that actually addresses some of the basket of issues which an SME might face in terms of timely payment, working capital cycles, and stuff like that. So, whereas on the flip side, if you have a portfolio of large customers or a large number of customers, then I think the risks in the business go down. But I think that comes with an element of discounting you need to do as to how much, what my rate of collections would be and so on and so forth. It's a bit of a trade-off which you need to make as to what should be your portfolio of customers. But if you have the right set of portfolio, large or small or whatever be the number of customers, I think you will actually have growth. I think it goes down to customer selection, and again, business after businesses, the right portfolio of customers drives growth.
Okay, thank you for that. Sushma, your 2-3 points that you would like to advise SMEs, what they need to keep in mind to keep the growth going for the next few years?
Focusing on building your business. And in the beginning, you mentioned about where does the growth lie for MSMEs. I see it in service sector, especially big data, IT-enabled services, artificial intelligence, and so on. So as far as the manufacturing sector goes, transportation, clean tech, and defense services is definitely the areas which will fuel the India growth story. And of course, you cannot do without technology and innovation, because if you don't make it an integral part of doing your business, I mean, you'll perish.
Right.
So
That's true.
yeah,
Gotta
that's the way to go.
innovating to keep moving ahead.
That's the way to go.
Gaurav, your word last.
Yeah, I think the next 10 years is a very defining moment for SMEs, tech and non-tech alike. Fundamentally, because of the change that we are seeing in the tech penetration in all parts of our lives. I think fundamentally SMEs, should not really shy away from tech, but adopt tech as an enabler to their business. And as I said earlier, they have to treat this as an investment for the future. The same applies to skills, and there is this I would say risk that SMEs have in mind that if I train people on skills, they will go away. But the fact is, we'll end up creating skills in the market in general, and the skill will be available somewhere else and from somebody else. So if somebody moves from my company to other company, I have chances that somebody moves from other companies to my companies. But in general, the ecosystem is skilled. So I think skill and tech are two things that we have to stay focused on.
So you've got to look at empowering the ecosystem as well.
There is no other way.
Mr. Mahabharta, last word, your thoughts.
With tech, new markets, everything coming in, I think it's also time to revisit some of our business models. So the new business models will come into being. We've seen that happening, and very large number of very interesting new models have come in. So that's something that the SMEs will have to really work on and treat new models as new opportunities rather than a threat.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. Those were some great insights. And thank you so much. You've been watching this special episode of SBI General Insurance SME Awards, partnered by Times Network. Our nominations are still open, so please do log on to the website and nominate yourself. Thank you so much for watching.